Good evening. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, but we want to bring in our Facebook groups as well. That's the Mile High Huddle Facebook page, the Mile High Huddle podcast Facebook page, and the Mile Huddle Denver Broncos superfan groups. Those are three pages on Facebook we're streaming to. We'll let those open up and breathe a little bit, see if they want to join the party in here. We had one kind of kick us out this morning. There's one that's kind of holding back. Let me see. There we go. It looks like we got everybody in here. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I will be your guest host sitting in this evening for Chad Jensen. My name is Scott Kennedy. Over here on this side, you know this guy. That's Zack Kelberman. Zack, meet and greet over the weekend. Did you have a good time? Sorry I missed y'all, and welcome back. Hope you've made it home safely.
Yeah, I had an excellent time as always, and now the meet and greet officially, Scott, we're undefeated when MHH is in attendance for Broncos games, so that was pretty fun seeing a Broncos win, but just getting a chance to meet each and every one of y'all, everyone listening, and telling you how much we appreciate all that you do was the highlight of my football year so far. But Scott, you definitely were missed. We had at least one person who specifically came to at least specifically made travel plans to see you. You weren't there, but we kept you alive in spirit.
Well, I helped talk FA. I didn't know if it was FA into going, and then I didn't go. And as soon as you said that, I was like, God bless. I forgot to text FA and tell him I wasn't coming because he was going to come up from Arizona. Hopefully it wasn't. And if he did, there was still plenty of fun to be had. Okay. But Zack, before we say hello to some folks, as the algorithms go and alert everybody and our audience comes in, why don't you let us know, there was some big news today that came down through Broncos country. Why don't you let us know what the NFL decided on Kareem Jackson today?
Yeah, the Reaper finally caught up to old KJ. He was suspended 4 games for violating the unnecessary roughness rules of the NFL. Basically, it was a cumulative penalty for all the hits that he's dished out. And like Scott was saying before the podcast tonight, there was a little bit of a gray area with his hit against the Packers. Some say it was clean, like Justin Simmons. Others think it was dirty, but it was just the fact that it was Kareem Jackson, Scott. And that's the same point we've been making for weeks. He has that reputation. He's known as a headhunter. He's known by many as well as a dirty player. And when the attention is on you, you're going to get burned for it. So no KJ for 4 games. He is going to appeal, but it looked like, Scott, it could be PJ Locke time in Denver.
Well, so it looks like the appeal process goes to a couple of former players in the process. Yeah. One was Derek Brooks. The other, I believe, is James Thrash. Derek Brooks was a pretty good hitter himself back in the day. What do you think about having this go to a player appeals type of thing, and how would that benefit? I've got my thoughts on this. I want to hear yours. When I immediately read this was going to a player and they would decide on the appeal, what do you think on that?
Well, you mentioned Derek Brooks from the Bucks. I'm assuming same Derek Brooks.
I would assume so too.
And also James Thrash was the receiver, right? Former receiver for Philly, I think, something like that. So you have a player who's used to giving out hits who would be more sympathetic maybe to Kareem Jackson. You also have a former receiver, if that's the same James Thrash, who might not feel so sympathetic with KJ's cause and might look at it from an offensive point of view. But I think just overall, the film doesn't lie, and you can disagree with what happened yesterday, but it has been hit after hit after hit with KJ, and it was only a matter of time before it was going to turn from fines to suspensions. And that's what you said before the podcast tonight, Scott.
Yeah, I was a little surprised he didn't get suspended after back-to-back weeks. I thought for sure he was going to get suspended after that hit on Logan Thomas. That one was egregious, with a capital E. I kind of tweeted out before this doesn't surprise me. In fact, I said it this morning on the pod on Broncos for Breakfast that usually after 1 you might get away with that. After 2 you get a suspension, and then the third one you get more of a suspension. The worst of these hits, and this was his 5th fine of the year. Whether you agree with them or not, you're doing something wrong. And frankly, I said watching him make tackles, I said it reminded me of the old sailor dives that we used to do in the pools. That would, if I saw my kids do them, he wouldn't have to break his neck on the bottom of the pool. I'd break it for him. Where you'd put your hands to your side and just dive in like you don't have any arms. That's how he attacks the ball, with his head down and the crown of the helmet up. And if you don't hit with the shoulder, guess what you're going to hit with? And if you're aiming high, chest or a little bit, yeah, you're coming in and he's hitting guys helmet to helmet. if you see what you're hitting, which is what they teach you, you're not going to have this problem. There was a play in the second quarter, beginning of the second quarter. Fabian Moreau, who had a very good game, as much crap as I've given him, stands up a receiver, and Alex Singleton comes in helmet to helmet, plain as day. But it was face mask and like side of the helmet because he's up and he sees what he's hitting. Kareem Jackson doesn't do that. It's dangerous for him.
Yeah.
It's dangerous for, as you know, his teammates.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's dangerous for the players. It's not good for these guys are too big and too fast. People say, oh, they've taken us out of the game. Man, you've got 260-pound guys running 4.3s these days. It's just the game, the cranium hasn't changed to keep up with the speed of this and violence of this game for back in the day when, linemen were 210 pounds. I mean, and frankly, my thought on this, Zach, when I see the players on this, usually the players want to rule for the players, right? This is, oh, right, a jury of my peers, great. But what message are they going to send if they were to reduce this and say, you know what? It's okay to hit our guys like this. It's okay to hit our fellow members of the NFLPA the way you're hitting them. I don't see it happen, man. I think they'll hold this up.
Maybe I'm getting old. I did belly flops as a kid. I never did sailor dives. That doesn't sound too much fun. Diving in head
like
first,
I said, you jump off and you put your hands down your side like a fish, and you would dive into the pool, and that's how it looks like he's hitting.
Not for me. And you made a good point. I feel like Kareem Jackson really would have succeeded in like the early 2000s NFL. If you watch some of those jacked up clips on Twitter or YouTube, the NFL in the early 2000s, they did not give a crap about player safety. You can destroy people helmet to helmet, going low, illegal cut blocks, chop blocks. He would have succeeded in that era because it seemed like you said, the players were built differently. It was a different style of game.
But in the last, Zach, he's overcompensating.
He is.
He's an undersized former corner who isn't the physical specimen that most safeties are, and he has to overcompensate for the fact that he is now a safety. So he hits the way he does.
But at some point, he has to realize the eye is on him, and the NFL is watching him closely. And you can be a big hitter, but you got to kind of rein it back at times because it hurts your team and hurts your defense, and it hurts you as well. Kareem Jackson is an older player who very likely will be gone from Denver next offseason. You think he would want to put better film out there and not a warning to other teams like, listen, that's all I do. That's all I offer is I go for hard hits. I go for the head, and the NFL doesn't like me. I just think he should clean it up and be a little smarter about it.
Well, and people, I've seen some comments in here. There haven't been that many bad injuries and that type of stuff. You know what, guys? Participation in the youth leagues in football has been down big in the last decade because of the all the news about concussions coming out, the CTE, all of that type of stuff. In the youth ranks, participation in football is down huge, like frighteningly so. This is a reason why, y'all. So whether you agree with it or not, oh, it's not like the old days, and this has all gotten soft. So be it, man. There's still plenty of violent hits. You can still play this game without going in with the crown of your helmet every time you go in for a tackle. I'm for player safety too, and I get it, but Kareem Jackson is not playing good, technically sound football. Forget whatever else you want to do. It's not technically sound football. That's not how they teach you to tackle. So on that note, there's a lot of people that do a lot of good for us that I want to say hello to that have come in this afternoon, including David McElrath. And I guess David was there at the meet and greet, and I'm sorry I didn't get to see you. He comes in and says, good evening, Broncos country. Chad, Zach, Dylan, Deacon Scott, thanks for a great time yesterday. Made it back to Flagstaff, Arizona. MHH for life, Buckham for life, Buckham ×3, and Denver Broncos for life.
It was so cool seeing David out there, having a conversation with him, and just I called him a legend to his face. He didn't want to hear it. He was being a little coy about it, but he definitely is a legend. Each and every one of you are, and it was so much fun being out there and showing you how much we appreciate each and every one of you for what you do. Scott, so many people said to us and thanked us for putting the meet and greet on. I said, it's because of you. It's for you guys. You made this happen, so we're giving back to you. We should be thanking you. And David, for me at least, it started with you yesterday.
Yeah, it's a small way that we can say thank you for supporting us and letting us do this. Zach and I both do this for a living. You know, we're blessed that we can make our living working in sports, and it's because of people like you, people like Troy coming in. Troy says, "Hey guys, the KJ suspension might be a blessing. Forget the debates on the merits of the suspension. Let's get into this, what Troy has to say. No interception with Kareem Jackson instead of PJ Locke. Let's see what Moss and Skinner can do, you know, against the world champs. Have a great show." Forget all of the things we've talked about, the merits of the suspension. We've been trying to get rid of Kareem Jackson for 2 years.
True. It's
and it
true.
Looks like
and
the NFL just did it. What do you think that this can do for the back end of this defense with PJ Locke in there healthy?
Look what happened as soon as PJ Locke came into the game. I know it was a underthrown ball by Jordan Love, but he had the athleticism to get over there and pick that ball off. I don't know that Kareem Jackson, Scott, would have made the same play. So the Broncos are going to a youth movement. It's only a matter of time. It's when, not if, they play their younger players. So why not get a jump on it now? Kareem Jackson's not a part of the future. Maybe PJ Locke could be. In terms of Moss and Skinner, Moss could play. He's a fairly high round pick. He needs to see the field. But JL Skinner, Scott, I think something is going on behind the scenes where he's in the doghouse. He's not doing something right. It's almost like Albert O 2.0 or DeMarcus Walker. It might have preceded your coverage on the beat back in the day. Another player just couldn't get on the field for some reason or another. But I would expect now, with Kareem sidelined, we finally see what these rookies can offer.
Yeah, and I don't know with Skinner coming in, you know, getting hurt, drafting another hurt player, Zack. You know, where have we heard this before?
Right.
You know how healthy he is. There might be something else going on there. You know, it says healthy scratch. He's been part of the 53 though. He's not on the practice squad anymore, is he? Isn't he part of the 53?
Yeah.
So he's been healthy scratches that are just flat out not playing. So definitely strange, but yeah, it could be a blessing. Like we said, you know, we wanted Caden Stearns, and I know you absolutely, I'm not just putting words in your mouth, wanted Caden Stearns to start this, but he's
100%.
been banged up too. So the only person keeping Kareem Jackson off the field has been Kareem Jackson because nobody else has been healthy. And Kareem's been a warrior out there. Well, he's taken himself out. PJ, it's your turn. George Fox coming in. Appreciate you, Troy. He says, I think the team should get Mile High Huddle for every home game. Thanks, guys, for the best pod on our team. Thank you, George. Appreciate you. And yeah, undefeated out there. The strength, there were several streaks broken. I mean, there was a lot of juju going against the Denver Broncos in this one. Nick Kendall in attendance.
Yeah.
That's a rough one. 10 straight games of having leads blown at halftime and losing the game. 10 straight. That was an NFL record. Going down 17-16 in there. All of that gone. The undefeated streak of the mile. You know what? I think I'm going to put this. If the Broncos do not win this week, I'm making an executive decision right here. We're having the meet and greet against the Chiefs next year. I don't care if it's on Christmas frickin' Day. We're having it against the Chiefs. The meet and greet against the Chiefs, put it in writing.
That resolution, I think, would pass, Scott. And I don't want to speak for Chad, but we eventually want to get to 2 home games per year and really do the meet and greet upright every single season. So, George, we like the fact that we have good juju for the Broncos. And Scott, it's funny that you mentioned Nick because it's the first thing I said to him when I saw him at the meet and greet. I said, "What's your record again? What's your streak?" He goes, 0-9. I said, "Get out. Get out." It was just like, why are you here? But to his credit, he shows up and now it's 1-9.
Yeah, it's hard to feel like, you know, I was an only child. I know that explains a lot, but you know, you think the world revolves around you. And it's hard not to believe that when you go on a streak like 0-9. You're like, you know, how enough bad things happen to me constantly that there's no way this is a coincidence. I got my own little cloud that follows me everywhere. Well, Nick, ray of sunshine in the Mile High. So that one's over. So yes, Kansas City Chiefs, wait for the schedule. We're doing it next year. Unless the Broncos win this weekend, then we can pick whatever we want to. Michael Ronquillo coming in. He says, good evening, Zack and Scott on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Michael, thanks for everything that you get to do. Hopefully you can make one of these one time. Yeah. Make it up from Arizona. If we need a ride, we'll get you a ride. Thank you for all of the support you showed this morning. I'm not sure I got a chance to thank you properly on Broncos for Breakfast and everything you do for us. Colby C. Collier, and I think this is a great point from Triple C here. He says, eating a bit of crow about our kicker situation. Maybe we did the right thing after all. Maybe Sean Payton did the right thing after all. There was a lot of doubt about the kicking situation, and he looked great. I mean, again, you should make 8 of 10 at least from 40 to 49 yards. But he did more than that, and he's been really good. Also, it was an interception, talking about the Pat Surtain thing. Don't trade Surtain, man. He's good. It would take a king's freaking ransom for Surtain. It would have to be one of those that you could take to Broncos country and say, I couldn't turn this down. Are you joking? I'm sorry. I know we love Surtain, but I got 3 first-round draft picks and a starting wide receiver out of it. And, name a couple other things and a free membership to my American Express card or whatever. But it would have to be absolutely nuts for that. And I'm lowering ticket prices $50. One of those type of deals for it to happen. But talk about the patience that Sean Payton has shown towards Vance Joseph and Will Lutz, 2 guys we were ready to get rid of pretty quickly this season.
Well, you're right about Surtain. That's how the only way I would answer the phone is if you bring me 3 first-round picks, and we can maybe have a conversation. But he's still, I think, the best corner in the NFL, and that was a pick yesterday. But c'est la vie. This is one of the few situations where I don't have to eat too much crow about Will Lutz. I still think, and I've held this belief, the Broncos made the right choice moving on from McManus. I think they made the right choice acquiring a kicker that Sean Payton was familiar with. And I can speak for myself. I wasn't one of the ones that jumped off the ledge after week 1 when Lutz had that little mini meltdown. I thought he would settle in, and sure enough, he has. So, yeah, I think Sean Payton did do well. It was a good eye for talent with that. With VJ, though, I'm still, Scott, just a couple games does not erase all of the other bad that the defense has done. They looked pretty good yesterday. They looked a little more battened up than the first quarter of the season, but really, who are you facing? I say this again. I mean, Jordan Love and the team was beat to hell, injuries left and right for Green Bay. It was a good effort, but he still has to show me a little more for me to really eat that crow.
No. I agree. I'm just saying that Sean Payton has stuck with these guys and they're improving. That's good man management, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And frankly, if I come out and, I want to set expectations as low as I possibly freaking can. The way there's only way to go is up. Vance Joseph did that like a boss to start this season where, anything, but I'm joking, but the defense has played really well the last 2 weeks. And how much of this do you think is the players becoming more comfortable? How much do you think is, let's take slices. We're never binary here when we start talking about it's this or this. It's Vance Joseph. It's not enough talent. It's one of the other. No. There's lots of things in here. You got Vance Joseph and the guys getting more comfortable. Vance Joseph getting more comfortable with the players. You got some health with some guys coming back that are playing. You've got some young guys that are getting some more experience. And you've lost 2 veterans who don't have the best track record of professionalism. How many of those things do you think? And number 4 is you're not playing the Miami Dolphins.
Right. The defense has looked better. I mean, we're going to credit Sean Payton when they're winning. I mean, everything is better, Scott, when you win. That's why we can all swallow another week of VJ or now credit Sean Payton for sticking with him. I just want to see more consistency, and the defense has benefited from getting they were without, to their credit, their defense, Justin Simmons and Josie Jewell and just key foundational starters. Since getting them back, they have settled down, but there are still a lot of leaks in the boat that I want to see plugged up before I'm fully buying in. And don't forget, we can compliment Sean Payton for preaching patience with VJ, but still, they're 2-5, and that is still his best lottery ticket for a top 5 pick. It's still this built-in scapegoat that he could still use if the season gets ugly a few weeks down the road.
Yeah, you're still, again, you start looking at the schedule again. This was a problem with getting off to a slow start. Okay, you're coming off winning against the Packers. That's great. Okay, here come the Chiefs at Bills. Vikings at home, Browns could be dangerous. At Texans can be dangerous. At Chargers, who knows? At Lions is dangerous. Patriots just got done beating the Bills. Chargers again, and Raiders. The Raiders might not even be fielding a team by 2024. That one's on January 7th. The schedule is maybe not as daunting as it looked at the beginning of the year with the Chargers and Raiders playing almost as bad as, what we've seen from the Broncos the first 6 weeks of the season. But it's still not an easy schedule. One of the guys that always makes us feel better, though, Stu McPeak coming in. What's that?
Zeus.
Thought I heard coming from the the Acropolis up there. It says, great day yesterday. Nice to meet everyone, and especially nice to watch a win. Thank you very much. I did not get to see you, and thank you for everything you've done for us in person. You've been around here a lot longer than I have, so I feel like I need your permission to be here. So I need the stamp of approval from the first face etched on the Mount Rushmore of Mile High Huddle. So great to have you here. Thanks for everything you do. Keith comes in with some stars over on Facebook. He says, good evening, gents. Did the win over the Packers change anything in regards to the trade deadline? Why don't you take a shot at this? I've given it some thought already. I think I might have hit on this one this morning. So let you go first, and then I'll follow up.
Well, don't forget, the Broncos still have one more game until the deadline, so they could still be patient and let certain players' trade values accumulate before making a move. But let's look at the players that were supposedly on the trade block. Jerry Jeudy had, for Jerry Jeudy standards, a better game than we've come to known from him. Courtland Sutton, I mean, he looks like a little more of the Courtland Sutton of old, so I think his trade value is holding pat. Simmons, he didn't get the game-winning pick. He's still a good player, but the one team that could have been in on Justin Simmons, the Eagles, actually made a big trade today for Kevin Byard, the safety from the Titans. So it probably takes him out of the Simmons sweepstakes. Garrett Bowles, I heard his name. He had a holding penalty on at least one occasion yesterday, so I don't know how much you're going to get. So Keith, to answer your question in a roundabout way, because they won and they don't necessarily have to feel more pressure to blow it all up right now, I do think they will exercise a little more patience, go through week 8, and see what happens after Kansas City.
And for me, I think it's changed in the fact that your veterans that you will be making contract changes with one way or another in the next season, your high-priced guys with flexibility in the cap, Courtland Sutton, Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons, those guys, those are the 3 big ones that have big contracts and very low dead cap. You already moved on from Randy Gregory. What I saw from those 3 guys are 3 guys that are still putting forth really good effort. They're not hurting your team through, I called Randy Gregory maybe, and I alluded to it earlier tonight, an addition by subtraction. Would Frank Clark be an addition by subtraction? Justin Simmons is not hurting your team with his presence.
Right.
Courtland Sutton is not hurting your team with his presence. There could be an argument for Jerry Jeudy on that one with the attitude or not, but I don't know that enough, so I'm just going to say no, he's not. So what it does is it means that I don't have to get rid of these guys at all costs this season. The main benefit you're going to get, none of those guys has real big trade value. At least I don't think so. Jerry Jeudy might be at best a second, maybe a third, and I still am not sold on anything more than a 4th or 5th for Justin Simmons because of the position, the age, and the contract. Your benefit of those guys, your biggest benefit of those guys is going to be getting them off the books next year. You don't have to trade them in the next week for that to still be the benefit. That doesn't change. So I don't just have to accept whatever you're willing to give me to get rid of these guys anymore. You are getting rid of Randy Gregory. You are cutting him no matter what. Okay, let's swap a 7th and 6th. You don't have to do that with these guys. So for me, that's what it's changed. It shows me that these guys are professionals. No matter the record, they're still going to go out there and fight and be good teammates, good Denver Broncos. And I don't have to take any old offer. You have to make me an offer that makes it worthwhile for me to say, yes, I have to break the news to my fans that we're sellers again, but I got a 3rd-round pick for it. Okay, we can do that. Okay, we understand that, y'all. It sucks, but we're sellers again. So that's, Keith, that's how it's changed for me.
You're right about Simmons, Scott. I mentioned Kevin Byard. You know what he went for today? He's also an all-pro Pro Bowl safety. A 5th, a 6th, and a random safety thrown in. So fat chance moving Simmons for a 3rd-round pick. My other thing as well, Scott, they're coming off a win. Their first home win of the season. what would the optics look like if they turn around right after a win, as rare as it is, and start, breaking down the team and having a fire sale?
Yeah. And the fire sale means everything must go. If you get value, we understand value. We can sell value. And frankly, you didn't get value for Randy Gregory. I'm convinced, until someone tells me otherwise, that was as much about attitude and effort as it was about lack of production.
The value is getting him off the team.
Yeah, was addition by subtraction. You're not getting that with Bowles, with Simmons, with Jewell, and with Jerry Jeudy. At least the way I see it, especially the other guys. Jeudy again causes headaches, but I don't know how big a deal that is in the locker room. I don't know how big a deal that is to his teammates. It gets made a big deal in the media because he's going after other media guys, and there's an old saying, don't pick fights with people who buy ink by the barrel. That's an old newspaper saying from way, way, way back when. It still goes. The people with the megaphones, don't pick fights with them. It doesn't go well. Who's going well for us today? Grover says, coming in with a nice yellow super chat. He says, Scott, love the show this morning. Well, thank you, sir. Sorry I didn't get to catch it live, but 100% agree with the comeback and changing the culture of losing. Are we great? No. But winning is better than losing. And Zach, what I said this morning was, we talk about momentum and how powerful momentum is. I mean, it's a force. You can't calculate it. You can't see it, but my God, you can feel it. You can feel it from play to play. You can feel it from quarter to quarter. You can feel it week to week, and frankly, season to season. This team has 7 years of momentum, 10 games of momentum saying you're losing. You're losing this game. And when it starts to go bad, you can feel it. Here we go again. It didn't. I don't care if it was the Packers. I don't care if it was the Chicago Bears. You broke that streak and you found a way to win a game that you've been finding ways to lose. That's how things start getting better, Zach.
100% right. Yeah, it's always better to win ugly than lose pretty, and winning always feels pretty good. We can talk about the draft, we can talk about Caleb Williams, but I've still been a believer in the draft is going to fall how the draft falls. The Broncos are going to pick where they pick, and all we have to do is be along for the ride. And it does feel good, though, to talk about a win. It does feel good for the Broncos to not say, here we go again, to not fall back into their losing ways, to not blow that game like they would have in so many other situations. So I agree, Grover. This is how you build a winning culture. Some may want it to start in 2024, but the way you start that is by winning. You build a winning culture by winning. You start with 1, then you go to 2, then you go to 3, and you start to stack those. That's how you become a winner, literally.
Sean Payton was asked about it on his conference call. And I won't read the whole thing, but he basically was talking about when it can go. And Nick and I have talked about this, the momentum doesn't necessarily carry over from year to year, but I disagree with that to a certain extent. No, if I finish with 3 in a row, that momentum might not carry over to the next season, but it can carry to the off season. It means I don't have to pay $85 million for a right tackle. I might get one for half that price because he wants to come to Denver and play, and for a team that's on the way up, an ascending team. It helps me in free agency for sure. It helps in winter workouts. It helps with all of those type of things when there's excitement, when there's a buzz around the team. Sean Payton today talked about the Detroit Lions and how they had done really well. But he says the Lions last year as an example. They went 1-6, then flipped a switch. There's been a history and there's been a ton of teams. The Carolina Panthers team that Denver beat in the Super Bowl the prior year. Not the year they went to the Super Bowl, but the prior year. They had one of those flip the switch moments towards the midseason. They beat the snot out of us in the Superdome and went on a roll. You got to start somewhere. And for the naysayers that like to say, it was just the Green Bay Packers. They stink. You stink. You're 1-5. And I'm not making fun of Denver Broncos, y'all. I'm making fun of the people that say, well, you haven't beaten anybody yet, or it was just this team. Man, until you beat those teams, you are those teams. Right. So to get to mediocre, you have to be above bad. This is a start, Zach. It's a start.
It is a start. And, the counterpoint here is what KDW says. They win one game, now they've changed the culture. We didn't say that. We said that's how the culture gets changed, is by stacking wins one at a time. But I do kind of understand where they're coming from here, Scott. It's one thing to beat the Packers, but what's the one thing the Broncos have not done in what feels like eons is put together a winning streak. So you beat Green Bay, you didn't blow it, you got your first win at home, fine. If you really want to impress the naysayers, if you really want to convince the skeptics that the Broncos are turning over a new leaf, go out there on Sunday and beat Kansas City. Take down Mahomes, end that streak, win 2 in a row, and then I think you'll see the culture really start to come to life.
Yeah, and we're not saying now they've changed the culture. No. It's a start. It's a start. They're changing the culture. You don't change 7 years of this negative momentum. Like I said, it's play to play. It's week to week. It can be year to year, the momentum. It's changing. It's changing the culture. And it starts when you break one of those streaks. You get that monkey off your back. Man, 10 in a row. You're lost. You beat the Chiefs. When that streak finally ends, it will be much easier to beat them again. Because you won't constantly have that negative pressure on you of here we go again. It'll be easier to beat them the next time you're in a close game. Right now, it's hard. I mean, they're better than you are right now. That makes it really difficult. But to go against all that negative emotion, as I said, momentum, it's mental. It's absolutely insane the impact that it has on performance, and it's completely non-tangible. Deanna Henry, speaking of tangible, coming in, helping us out in a big way. I don't feel as bad missing now that I found out that Deanna wasn't there either. Deanna Henry says, I was sorry to miss the meet and greet. I really wanted to meet everyone. Patrick Surtain is here to stay. I'm with you, Zach. Vance Joseph needs to go, in my opinion.
Deanna, first of all, thank you so much. And you were another who was definitely missed at the meet and greet. Hopefully you can make it one day. PS2 here to stay. I tend to agree. I don't think any team is coming through with a franchise quarterback offer for PS2. And VJ, he signed his death warrant in week 3. And he's been living on borrowed time, in my opinion, since then. The defense can look better, and they have played better. But at the end of the year, if the Broncos finish 5-12, are you really going to bring VJ back for another year? At this point, is there anything he can really do to salvage another year in Denver? I don't think so. Again, it's a matter of when, not if, Deanna, the Broncos do decide to move on. But they can take advantage of the improved defense in the meantime, starting next Sunday or this coming Sunday against Kansas City. That defense played them well, Scott, the first game. That was the offense's fault for not capitalizing. Show me that again, VJ. Show me that defensive output once more, and the Broncos win that game, and then maybe I'll soften a little bit on you.
Yeah, soften is one thing. Again, going back to KDW, so we're not changing. We're not changing our mind. They have a good defensive game, and we're ready to say that Vance Joseph needs to say, no. Right now, we're still on the Vance Joseph is probably out at the end of this season. We haven't changed on that. Now, they've given up less than 20 points on defense 2 games in a row. Make that 10 games in a row, and I'll listen.
Exactly.
Then I'll start listening. And frankly, he might start getting calls for head coaching jobs again if he does that. And you're like, okay, go. Thank you. Oh, we loved you. No. Oh no. Thank you. So it takes some time. But this is how it starts. I've been preaching. One of the things that's made this one of the things that made last season so tough was you had no draft pick.
Yeah.
You're sitting there. Normally, when you're losing, you can say, "Oh, well, at least I'm getting rewarded for being awful by the league with a high draft pick." And last year, it felt like every time you'd lose, it was a double kick in the nards because you'd be like, "Oh yeah, great. Oh yeah, the team we traded with gets our pick." And it just sucked. So this is different. This year's different, but again, the winning starts, and it's going to take some time to reverse that positive momentum. But I feel like this is. Oh, I know what I was going to say as I walk my way in a circle. You've been looking on the timeline for the check mark to bounce up. When's it going to bounce up? Does the culture change? No. Am I up to, okay, this is where I want to be? No. But the Denver Broncos have been on the bottom really since Christmas of last year is when I think you hit rock bottom, and you haven't moved up since then. Maybe a little bit in the offseason, you got some excitement about Sean Payton. You got some good free agents, but there wasn't any time where you felt like the arrow has gone up. And it hasn't up until this season. Now I almost, after this win in this fashion, I feel like there was at least a little bloop that maybe the patient, I'm getting a heartbeat again, Zach. Bloop. Now we need it to start accelerating up. And it might not happen this week, but I still feel like you're on the right track.
Such a great point about the double whammy of having a losing season and not having anything to fall back on to make it a little softer, the blow, and not having your own draft pick. But it's crazy, Scott. I know where the Broncos have been the last 8 years. It's just wild to me that they win a football game and we have to get on here and justify and explain why winning a football game is a good thing, why the Broncos winning is a positive outcome, and not have to feel bad like we're touching on a taboo subject because of the tanking crowd.
I get it though with the tanking. Okay, that's one thing, but the other part of it is, there's enough Ted Lasso fans around now. They say it's the hope that kills. See, the Broncos country, this streak of losing, this feeling of losing, if you haven't been fans of multiple teams, if the Denver Broncos have been your primary team, this is a foreign concept to y'all. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is. It's not to me. So you get your dreams crushed enough times that, oh, they did this. We just got Russell Wilson. Yay! Nathaniel Hackett. We suck again. That's where it goes. So it's a naysayer, cynic point of view. We're like, yeah, great. Beat the Packers. Okay, now I'm really going to get my hopes up so we can go get our asses beat by the Chiefs. Not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. And I've come up with this saying because I am one of those surly SOBs. If you never get your hopes up, you're never disappointed. You're just a grumpy bastard all the time. I get it, Zach. I do.
Yeah, I mean, but there's always going to be the naysayers out there. Even if they go out there and beat Kansas City, for example, they're going to say, oh, well, they're only 3-5. I mean, they've only beaten them once in the last 17 times. I mean, but it's still a good thing. Winning football games, if you want the Broncos to have long-term success, they have to learn how to win. They have to have a winning culture, and it has to start somewhere and at some time. I get you want to see more. I want to see more too, but I'm not going to feel bad. I'm not going to apologize for the fact the Broncos won a football game because, like you mentioned, it has been so foreign.
Kyle comes in. He says, we beat Kansas City, and that's as good as wing season. Ha, ha, ha. Michaela Israel, I just saw this, and she was sharing, said, I'm sorry I missed the meet and greet too. Cooper is grounded, and our family dog passed away on Thursday. That is a very hard week. I'm sorry to hear that. Cooper, I hope he gets his stuff. Frankly, that's why I wasn't there either, because my son got grounded, and my ladies were going out of town, and I had to stay here to make sure he got his stuff done. But the dog thing, the family member stuff, that's tough. So sorry to hear that, Michaela. It was great seeing you last year again. We both missed it. Hopefully I'll see y'all next year.
Yeah, so sorry about that, Michaela. I remember that you shared with us what happened with your dog last week, and we're continuing to think of you. We talked about you at the meet and greet yesterday. I was asking Chad and everyone else, where's Michaela too? Because Michaela, the original Michaela, the Duchess, was there, and I was hoping to run into you to thank you and also talk some smack because our teams are playing in fantasy this week. But we hope you're doing better, and thank you for tuning in tonight.
All right. We're about 40 minutes in. We might cut it a little bit short tonight so we can watch a little Monday Night Football. What else in the realm of Broncos country? One of the things, and maybe I didn't spend enough time on this because I've spent enough time talking this guy down, but we talk about some of the improvements. Some of the improvements can be with personnel. Damari Mathis had 3 snaps on defense, and I don't know that any of those are injury related. Fabian Moreau started and was one of the 4 players on defense that played every single snap. Fabian Moreau played great. I had gotten after Fabian Moreau. The only time I will really get after players negatively, Zach, isn't when they're not good enough. That's not their fault. That's the organization's fault for not having a better option. I know that's kind of like putting them down too. When Fabian Moreau was in Atlanta, he was soft and he would avoid contact, and it made me angry. That is something I will call out. That wasn't an issue at all yesterday. As a 64 play full-time player on the field for the Denver Broncos, he did his job and he did it well. So congratulations to him. And maybe that is a launching point for Fabian Moreau, who's done some good things in this league in his career.
He actually was singled out today by Sean Payton. Payton said he graded out really well in that game, along with Baron Browning, who made his season debut. So maybe like they found something in Fabian, or at least a stability factor, because Damari Mathis has been so volatile, has been picked on repeatedly every single game. My straw man to that, Scott, is who did he really have to contend with? There's no true number one receiver in Green Bay, Romeo Doubs or Jalen Reed or Watson. So it was a better matchup for the secondary, but to the secondary's credit, including Fabian Moreau, they took advantage of it.
Yeah, and again, beat the guys that are put in front of you. That's all you can ask.
Exactly.
And again, for me, it was more about when they're running sweeps your way, because they got some running backs. I mean, I used to watch Fabian Moreau let himself get blocked into the sidelines, out of bounds, just so he wouldn't have to contend with a pulling wide receiver or somebody coming his way and get in on a tackle. That's what I got after him for. That wasn't an issue. This was a different player out there, and he was physical. Whether or not you're struggling in route coverage or not, being physical is different. And Green Bay is a physical team. They got a pair of physical running backs, and he did a really good job this week. So wanted to definitely call that out. Grover coming in with a super chat. Appreciate you, Grover. Again, this is number 2 on the night. He says, we need to look at the KC game as our Super Bowl. Snap that horrible losing streak and continue our winning culture. Yeah, keep building. Get better. Always get better. That's all I've ever asked, because I haven't had a championship team really in my life. Just at least put forth, make us think you're at least trying to get better. That's a start. It's got to start somewhere. Snapping that streak. I don't know if it's going to happen. You're still going to be a big underdog. The Chiefs are good. The Broncos are fragile. Let me put it that way, Zach. I think
good word.
They're building, but I'm not going to say it's a house of cards, but it's like wet cement. They're starting to build a foundation of this culture change, but it's fragile right now, and it's not there yet. This is not by any means the finished product, Zach.
It's a great word. I was actually thinking like Jenga blocks, where you can build them upward, but they're still rickety back and forth. That's where the Broncos are right now. And after yesterday's victory, they stacked one more block and they're that much higher. I don't know though, Scott, and I'm not trying to be too optimistic or look past too much here. If they do beat KC, they're 3-5. The season necessarily wouldn't be over. And you talk about momentum. You snap that streak in your house. You win 2 in a row. You take down Kansas City. Finally, you're 3-5. That could propel them. That would propel them for the entire season. And who knows what happens from there.
I wanted to make this point this morning and I forgot. So I'm glad this came up. I would not want to play Buffalo this week. After Buffalo just got beat by a bad New England Patriots team, somebody's going to get their ass beat by the Bills. This week coming up. The Bills play the Buccaneers who couldn't beat the Atlanta Falcons, even though they had 3 red zone turnovers, including 2 on the goal line, and still got beat by the Falcons in Tampa. The Bills are going to boat race the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. You don't play the Bills this week. You get another week. You're not going to get the full force of we just got embarrassed by the Patriots that the Buccaneers are going to get. So maybe, and again, we're getting so far ahead of ourselves. But that's what concerns me, Zach, is, okay, great. You win one, you go to 3-5. Now you got to go to Buffalo, man. That was what made it so tough getting off to this slow start with the schedule. Losing those first 2 games made this part of the schedule so much harder and must win, because you could win this one and then still come out at your 3-6 halfway through the season. We'll take it. Beat the Chiefs. Don't worry about the Bills.
I just know that if they do beat Kansas City, they're going to have a feeling, and they should, that they can beat anyone,
and they can,
including Buffalo. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But maybe, you mentioned a bad team playing well or pissed off the next week. Maybe the inverse is true, because Kansas City had a very dominant offensive showing against the Chargers. Mahomes went for 400 plus and 4 touchdowns. This is after they've been struggling on offense, as we saw in that first Broncos game. So maybe it could work in Denver's favor. We will see, though.
The Gamecast predictor on ESPN has it 82.3% to the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be a tough one. No, y'all are, you get it, but there's still part of it that says, man, we've been in these games. One of them has to finally flip our freaking direction. Why not this week? Why not this week? BK, appreciate you coming in with a $5 super sticker. Thank you, my friend. Support for the show. And Taylor Christensen has a good point here, coming in with a super chat. He says, the O-line, I feel like it still hasn't been resolved. And I don't know if, for me, I don't want to say it hasn't been resolved, because I feel like at least the personnel are in place that it should be better. So when I think resolved, I think it can't be fixed because you don't have the pieces in place. The O-line still isn't playing well, but I think there's still potential there for it to play a lot better than it is.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be a work in progress, and adding 2 new starters, you're going to have an acclimation period. McGlinchey, that period has not gone well for him. The hope is that they will settle down the more they play together. I made a comment about Garrett Bowles. Someone said something correctly in the side chat here. He had no penalties, and I believe, or no sacks and no pressures allowed yesterday. He had the holding penalty, but overall, if you just get competent play from the O-line, your entire offense can look better. And that's why, Scott, at least on the ground, you saw what Javonte, McLaughlin, that 3-headed rushing attack could finally look like with some blocking up front.
I look at the PFF grades. I like to watch a game, trust but verify, and kind of say, okay, I didn't watch everybody, but I watched these 6 or 7 guys. This is what I thought. What did PFF think? Okay, well, this morning I got on this big rant about the defense played better, but you're generating 0 pressure, just 0 with your front 4. I didn't realize Broncos didn't have a sack. I wasn't, keeping up, watching the box score at the time. I just seen them with the Pants analytics. They're not pressuring the Jordan Love. You can't do that with Patrick Mahomes, for God's sakes. You're not going to be able to do that against Herbert. You're not going to be able to do that against Josh Allen. You're going to have to get after guys. So I put that in my back of my head. And then also on offense, you're like, man, Jaleel McLaughlin played great. This was Javonte Williams' best game since he's been hurt by far. Cortland Sutton was really good. So you look at it and you're like, okay, the highest rated guys: Cortland Sutton, Russell Wilson, Samaje Perine, Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin. I'm like, okay, that fits kind of what I saw. Well, how did they grade the OL then, since I didn't watch all of them all the way? Highest graded guy, Ben Powers, 69.9. Next was Cushenberry at 67.1, which is adequate. If I could get a 67.1 out of Lloyd Cushenberry every week, I'd take it, and I'd probably sign him to another contract. Quinn Miners coming in at 63.7, Garrett Bowles at 62.4, and Mike McGlinchey was one of the worst graded players out there at 54.3. That has got to improve. And I bring up the defense, Zach, because on the other side of the ball, your lowest rated guys that got significant, more than 20 snaps: Jonathan Cooper, Nick Benito, Josie Jewell, DJ Jones, Alex Singleton was really the front of your defense. It's got to get better. We'll be right back on the defensive. If they don't get any pressure on Mahomes and make them obvious, it's going to be a long day.
God, in the 50s again for Mike McGlinchey with an $87.5 million contract. And he wasn't facing the best front 7 in the world in the Packers. They were decimated by injury. They were playing backups everywhere, and still to have that poor of a grade, a giant oof, Scott, for sure.
All right, let's finish on a high note. The guy, though, that could help this turn around, the highest graded player, who only had 15 snaps, was PJ Locke. He was the only one above 72, and he had an 88.4 on 15 snaps. Zack Allen, starter, 49 snaps of 64. That's a lot of snaps for a defensive lineman. That might be part of the problem right there. The rotation on the DL is non-existent because your depth stinks. But Zack Allen came in with a 71. And I mentioned the guy who could come in and help. Baron Browning was your second highest graded defensive player by PFF, despite the 2 encroachment penalties at 72, including a 90.8 pass rush. That is a difference maker.
Absolutely. Pressure is production. I know the Broncos didn't have a sack, but you looked up, randomly every now and then you'd see Baron Browning putting some pressure on Jordan Love, or at least changing the throwing lane or making him a little more uncomfortable. Baron Browning is by far the Broncos' best outside linebacker. And, again, to give VJ a little credit, now that his personnel is getting a little healthier, the output is getting a little better as well. No more 70-point losses or 70-point, allowances, Scott.
We could go the rest of our lives and never see that again.
Hopefully we do.
Yeah. On that note, Zach, I think we're about ready to get out of here.
Because I would not have much more of a life if I have to witness another 70-20 game in Broncos country. But that was another tremendous episode of the MHH podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. Myself, I'm at Kelberman NFL. And don't forget Chad at Chad N. Jensen. If you guys want some merchandise, check it out, mhhmerch.com. Get you some. If you haven't, drop us a like. Please do so at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Also, you can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. And make sure you're leaving your football priest and or Deacon Scott. Don't forget a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, guys and gals, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Want to say a special shout out to our super chat and Facebook superstars tonight. David McElrath coming in, breaking the ice for us tonight on YouTube. Troy, George Fox on Facebook, Michael Ranquillo on Facebook, Colby, the Triple C on Facebook, Stu McPeak, Zeus, Keith Brugman, Grover coming in a couple times, the Lady D, Deanna, BK, Taylor Christensen, and Michael Ranquillo to close us out with a final note saying, great show tonight, Zach, Scott, on the Mile High Huddle podcast, and go Broncos.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Scott, for sitting in today. It was always a pleasure potting alongside of you. It was actually nice doing an aftermath episode where the Broncos won, so maybe we'll have more of those in the future. Chad should be back on Thursday night, but you're in the saddle with Nick tomorrow for Broncos for breakfast?
Nick and I haven't been on a podcast together in like 10 days.
Tomorrow that changes.
I don't know what that's like. I usually talk to him more than I do anybody in my family, so we'll be back. We'll be back. It'll be good to see Nick again.
All right, check that out tomorrow morning. We're back in action Thursday night. Have a great start to your week. Take care, and as always, go Broncos.